Mexico intends on coming to an agreement with us, and I would argue there's not a grown-up in Canada in charge there.
They know Carney's plan. Welcome back to Moose on the Loose. My name's David. Today we have the Americans calling out Carney for exactly who he is and how he is running his party, using fear of the Americans and Donald Trump to boost himself in the polls. They're blowing this wide open as the Kuzma renegotiation is happening, and Mexico is not playing silly games. We have wild back and forth with Pierre and people attacking Pierre and all sorts of stuff. Let's jump into this. Starting this one off, we got Shreyatis posting new Palace Data Ontario poll. The PCs with 36.9% and the Liberals with 32.1%. You can see a slight gain there, 1.5%, and the NDP going up to 23.6 with 1.5% increase. Modeled out, that's minus 25 seats for the PCs and plus 20 for the Liberals, plus 5 for the NDP. Interesting to see how this dynamic's changing in Ontario. We've got this one here where Tim Houston won't be filing appeal against the judgment came down regarding fining people for walking in the woods. We got Ezra Levant commenting saying it's weird to have a lawbreaker as a lawmaker, but this is Canada. And we got Tim Hodgson here, says Alberta's proposed pipeline could receive federal funding through the Indigenous Loan Guarantee Program, saying public money could support Indigenous ownership. There they are again, prioritizing 5% of Canada over the rest of us. Make that make sense. And while we're talking about Alberta, we got Danielle Smith here saying that the temporary foreign worker program has been a complete disaster, costing 10 times more than what these people are producing. You heard that right, 10 times more.
Of temporary workers who are in our education system is another 600 million. Social services like childcare subsidy, Alberta Child and Family Benefits, student aid, we estimate will cost $100 million for temporary residents. So we're well over $1 billion in cost. And yet in that same year, those same temporary workers generated $150 million in tax revenue. And that's not how it's supposed to work. We're actually supposed to generate more revenue than the cost associated with supporting those workers. So that's why we're looking at how they would pay for a healthcare premium, as well as ensuring that maybe they leave their kids at home until they're prepared to make a permanent commitment to Canada and be a permanent taxpayer.
That's outrageous. 10 times more. Moving ahead, we've got Erin O'Toole here. Listen to this nonsense. Former CPC leader Erin O'Toole told Global News that Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives need to moderate their policy positions if they want to beat the LPC. Coming from this guy who lost to the Liberals and did a worse job of it. Ignore the culture war issues, ignore the floor crossings, just focus on long-term prosperity for Canadians. This guy doesn't know how to win. The audacity of him to tell Pierre how to win when he doesn't know what it's like to win. We got Ezra Levant posting this. O'Toole got 8% fewer votes and 25 fewer seats than Poilievre. Not sure he's the best advisor on how to win. But O'Toole is an expert on carbon taxes and C-word mandates and banning MPs from supporting the truckers, and on being disloyal for a few pieces of silver. Ouch. Poilievre needs to be exactly who he is a conservative leader, unlike Erin O'Toole, who's this lukewarm conservative at best. Moving ahead, look at this. We've got Warren Kinsella of the Toronto Sun posting, female media colleagues don't need me or any guy to defend them, but Carney is really condescending to female reporters who are doing their jobs. It's turning into a pattern. He should stop. Wow. I mean, I call this out on the channel all the time. Carney always talks over women. He always talks down to women reporters, female reporters. He does it to men as well, but not nearly as much. It's quite evident that he really talks down to women. He always walks in front of his wife on all these world tours. He doesn't walk side by side. It's like he's got a superiority complex. Maybe it's a Napoleon complex since he's such a small little guy. Especially playing hockey, you see all the bigger guys big and strong and can do power forward and all that kind of stuff. And you got this little guy who wishes he was bigger and stronger. Maybe that's where it stemmed from childhood. Who knows? But either way, Carney's very arrogant to women and condescending. And then you've got guys like Warren Kinsella calling this out on Twitter. Appears to be ongoing and escalating trend with Carney. He has difficulty responding to challenging questions. The one with Bloomberg yesterday, I mean, it was very quite clear. He's like, you're from Bloomberg. Like, I sat on the chair. You should not be questioning me. I'm Mr. Bloomberg. I was Mr. Chair. Is that kind of attitude. Moving ahead, we've got Robert Fife. Look at this. We know who butters his bread. You're going to see some wild ping pongs here. I'm going to show you the after first of what stemmed on these comments from Robert Fife.
Pierre Poilievre can't keep his caucus together. So how can he expect to negotiate with the Trump administration? It's not serious. And we've all seen when what's happened with Britain, with Starmer. He was going to have this great relationship with the United States. Well, now Trump is going after him all the time. He's just not a reliable person to negotiate. And I just don't see Pierre Poilievre, who's don't think he's ever negotiated anything, is going to be the person that would be able to get a deal. But all the power to him if he thinks he can.
Yet what deal has Carney got? This guy's got some nerve coming on here and saying Poilievre can't do it when he's the bureau chief of the Globe and Mail and he's not written one article on Mark Carney's conflicts of interest. Carney has more conflicts of interest than any prime minister in Canadian history, and he has not written a single article. How does he have any credibility whatsoever? Now contrast this with this clip here where Poilievre goes full scorched earth on Mark Carney.
You heard a lot of complaints about the Bank of Canada when they jacked up interest rates. They've lowered them faster than the U.S. Inflation is, the interest rates are lower. So you also at one point suggested the Bank of Canada governor should be fired. You can Google the list of nations who fired the central bank chiefs. It's like Zambia, South Sudan, Iran, Egypt. What does it say about your economic education that you wouldn't join that kind of club?
Well, that's just false. So if I could, your comments are just false. What does it say about my academic education? Well, I'll tell you, my education is in predicting what actually comes to pass. So back in 2020, Mark Carney and I both made predictions. You can see them. They're on tape. Mark Carney said that COVID would lead to deflation right before the worst inflation in 4 decades. I said we would have inflation, and ultimately was proven right by the facts. I'm not finished. Then I said we should not print money because it would drive up the cost of everything. Mark Carney openly advised the United Kingdom and Canada to print cash. What did we get? We got the worst inflation. We got twice as many people at food banks. In just 7 years, we've doubled food bank lineups. I had catastrophic prediction. I also said we would have a housing crisis back in 2020. What did we get? The highest housing costs in the G7. The only country that came even close was the UK. Why? Because Mark Carney, as governor of the Bank of England, printed so much money that he caused a housing crisis in that country. So I think we should judge qualifications based on actual results and who was proven right. On all of the issues of the last 10 years, on carbon taxes, oil and gas production, pipelines, money printing, inflation, housing, I have been right, and Mr. Carney has been wrong. And I say that with the greatest humility.
Wow. So this reporter tried some greasy hit piece question on him, and that backfired wildly right in his face. Because Poilievre's been waiting for this for a long time. He knows the laundry list of things that he's called out, that he's been right on. Because if you're sitting in opposition for year after year and you lose the election, you think about all these things and they're ready, locked and loaded. He didn't need to look these up. He's not looking at notes on a podium. It's funny looking at some of these comments here, like he's full of crap, he's lying through his teeth. He's not, though. We didn't get deflation after the world event. We have massive inflation. You could go through every single point, and he's right. It's funny, people bringing up Justin Trudeau and his education. I mean, they went from the snowboard instructor to the central banker, and they have a problem with Poilievre, though. Now, to take this another step further, we got CBC Watcher posting this. This guy here is Deputy U.S. Trade Representative Rick Switzer. This guy's very much in the business of getting the deals done with Mexico and Canada, with Kuzma, and he absolutely goes scorched earth on Mark Carney. He points out his entire agenda, what he's doing in Canada here. He's taking advantage of Canadians, just calls him out. This is probably the most scathing public admission of what's going on coming from an official representative from any country, really.
I think having some discipline on reminding folks how valuable it is. There really is no other choice. What I'll say is that the countries that are led by serious leaders, and I'll say President Sheinbaum is a serious leader in Mexico. When we came in and we were talking, Ambassador Greer was just there, we're talking to Mexico about this, and the president has spoken to, directly about this. They have been very serious. Look, we know the United States is our most important economic partner, that it is the policy of President Sheinbaum that the United States and Mexico will have a positive economic relationship, and that we know that we'll have some friction and we'll have to figure it out, but we're going to figure it out, right? This is the bottom line. There are other economies who decided to make it personal, and I think Carney has made it personal. I think it's political malpractice for the Prime Minister of a Canadian, of Canada to pit politically himself against any president. I don't care what the president is, who the president is, what party they represent. It's political malpractice. Canada is dependent upon the U.S. economy. That's just a fact, right? That's not hubris. That's not something that Canada needs to be concerned about. It's not something Canada can change, right? The fundamental fact is geography wins out. Canada is located where it's located. They can't move shop. They can have a weak economy that is underperforming and not doing well, and Carney can feel superior, or they can have an economy that participates as a partner of the U.S. economy, and Carney can do what a grown-up should do, which is figure it out, and come like President Sheinbaum and decide that the United States and Canada will have a positive economic relationship. It's my job as a person who's supposed to protect Canadian jobs, Canadian citizens, and the Canadian economy to not let my ego and my feelings dictate what's best for my own economy.
Wow. He basically just called Mark Carney a toddler. He said he's not a grown-up. He's not showing up for the people of Canada, and he's 100% right. He's not. It's all about net zero for him.
That's a very powerful statement. Do you think that this will have implications for USMCA, for the negotiations between the U.S., Mexico, and Canada?
Yeah, of course it is. You just can't, right? Not like, look, was Ambassador Greer in Canada? Did he meet with Carney? No. Was he in Mexico on Monday? Did he meet with President Sheinbaum? Yes. We have issues with Mexico we're still working through, but Mexico intends on coming to an agreement with us. We intend on coming to agreement with them. The grown-ups are in the room talking because there's a grown-up in the presidency in leadership there. And I would argue there's not a grown-up in Canada in charge there. You don't go out of your way to antagonize the leader of the country that you are absolutely existentially tied to. It's just political malpractice.
Wow. Somebody said it. Somebody in a high up position finally said it. Did he basically say Mark Carney is a giant narcissistic toddler with a superiority complex throwing a temper tantrum? Yes, that's basically what this guy just said. Somebody give Rick Switzer a medal. He has the courage to speak the truth on Mark Carney and USMCA. We need a grown up in the room, but Canadians who voted for Carney thought they had that when Justin Trudeau finally left. Maybe immaturity is just a liberal thing. Jumping over to CBC, listen to this. Even Andrew Coyne taking shots at Carney, giving praise to Poilievre.
It's not new that anybody's talking to social media, that they're doing their own videos. I think the framing of the way the Prime Minister put his forward, that this was sort of a future guidance, I think was the language he used for Canadians. Guidance. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I also thought Pierre Poilievre criticizing it was kind of a little ironic, but Andrew, please give me your take.
Well, forward guidance is an odd thing to invoke because it was a bit of a bust as a policy and central banks moved off of it. But nevertheless, he's trying to shape the debate, frame the issues surrounding it, prepare people perhaps for bad news. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of the usual boasting about his record, such as it is, and making promises for the future. I was struck by the historical and military allusions, which seem to suggest that more than just trade talks are at stake here, and we'll have to find out just where we're going with the relationship with Donald Trump and the Americans. But it was quite somber in its tone. I should say, I think we should be pleased that our leaders are speaking to us in more than 30-second sound bites. 10 minutes, you got to kind of sustain an argument. I thought Pierre Poilievre's rebuttal to it was quite good. He pointed out that, there's been no new pipelines built. There's been no new trade agreements negotiated. There's been, very little progress on housing. They're spending more. The deficits are up. These are substantive complaints. They're rebuttable on the Prime Minister's side, but we're having contests of arguments and facts rather than just people yelling at each other and calling each other names. And I think we should be pleased about that.
Andrew Coyne, was this 3 for 3 now? I don't know what he's putting in his morning Wheaties there, but bringing some common sense here for the past 2 weeks. Good grief, what is happening? No kidding. You want to talk about what is happening? We've got Justin Trudeau came out of nowhere, brings up this story of Bombardier and China. I know it's Justin Trudeau, but this is pretty interesting, actually.
China has never yet been able to get an internationally certified significant commercial aircraft. They have some smaller ones that they can use locally, but neither the Americans or the Europeans, which are the agencies that the rest of the world looks to see whether you can add, a big passenger jet to your fleet, are anywhere near certifying anything built completely in China. So, about 10 years ago, Bombardier, a Canadian aerospace company that you know for making the Global Series and Challengers, decided it was going to get into the commercial aircraft building business. And it built something called the C Series, which was the most modern, single-aisle, extremely fuel-efficient, amazing plane. And we're in the process, they got it certified, they were in the process of trying to sell it, and Airbus and Boeing did everything they could do to prevent Bombardier from being able to sell those aircraft. They were talking to all their customers, don't you dare put in an order for the C series, don't you dare, don't you dare. And finally, Bombardier started really struggling. They had this beautiful aircraft, but they just couldn't get any customers for it. So what happens? China comes knocking on Canada's door, on Bombardier's door, and pulls up a dump truck full of money and says, we'll keep all the jobs in Bombardier across the country. Canada won't be trouble in this, but we'll buy Bombardier. We'll be able to get ourselves a commercial jet. So Boeing and Airbus that were busy trying to put out Bombardier out of business because they didn't want Bombardier to be a contest, almost drove us into China's arms, where China would have been obviously a much more significant competitor to those two dominant players. But concretely, it took me around the G7 table in Sicily, my second G7 in 2017, saying to Macron and Merkel and Trump, you are driving us into Chinese pockets, Chinese hands to protect jobs. They're willing to pay anything to get this. We don't want this to happen for our prosperity as Western countries. What can we do about it? Because Boeing is busy trying to put Bombardier out of business, and Airbus has crossed its arms and indifferent.
This is so funny. This has to come back to Justin Trudeau. He's missing the limelight. He's like, remember me, I'm number one. He's got to bring up this story, how he convinced everyone he was so good. We're being pushed into China's arms. Oh, we don't want that. Meanwhile, this guy has so many connections to China himself.
Well, 6 months later, because of those conversations, Airbus bought the C series, which now flies as the Airbus 220. They're made in Canada and elsewhere, and Canada's now the fifth Airbus country. So this was an example of internal economic pressures and coercion that where we're busy competing with ourselves as like-minded nations, we almost ended up giving a significant competitor that doesn't share the same approach and views as us a significant let up. And that wouldn't have happened if I and my team hadn't said, hey, guys, this is the trend line. We need to make that happen. Mm-hmm. We're seeing a similar thing happen right now with President Trump threatening the Canadian auto industry, where we're now having to look at working with China because the American industry doesn't want to work with us anymore.
This guy's unreal. He's talking as if he's in Canada. This guy's down in America partying with Katy Perry. And it's just funny. He brings up I and my team. Number one. He's just missing the limelight so badly. He's got to pump his ego here. You were already in China's arms. It's how both you and Carney got elected. No kidding.